So, what will we learn in this course? Today is the welcome day. We'll try and go a little slow. You get to know your part. You'll see how deep learning models work. We'll get used to PyTorch. In the first week, we will focus on the nuts and bolts, the universal components. Basically, everything that you will learn in week 1, you will use for every deep learning project ever in the future. In the second week, we will talk in a way about doing more with less. We will talk about all these different tricks that we use to need fewer parameters. Talk about convnets, recurrent neural networks, self-supervised learning, all these tricks that allow us to, in a way, deal with less data. And in week 3, we'll talk about more advanced topics: reinforcement learning, generative adversarial networks, continual learning, and causality, which is incidentally one of the areas I'm really excited about. In any case, you see, basically we will build step by step. You first learn all the nuts and bolts, then you will learn how to be efficient with parameters, and then you can use that for more advanced topics. So we'll teach you many domains on the site. So computer vision, for example, you'll learn a lot about the tricks of computer vision once we get into convnets, because that's where those are the standard examples. You will learn about a lot of natural language processing as we get into the recurrent neural network and the attention days. And you will get to learn about whatever else you're currently interested in as part of the projects that you will be running. Now, a question that I get a lot of people is, can you just focus on what matters most to you? The short answer is no, absolutely no. In more detail, deep learning consists of lots of tricks. We want to make sure that as many of them as possible are taught. Success in more advanced deep learning topics requires you to know all these little tricks that you can put together. Without earlier lessons, you will also miss the more crucial details in the later ones. So what's the history of this course? I've been co-teaching deep learning at UPenn for the last 3 years. Last year, I did so with Lyle Unger. Now, after Neuromatch last year, I was curious if I could bring that course into a Neuromatch type format to test the curriculum. Now, then following this, I contacted the people that I really admired in the deep learning literature. And I was like, look, here's the curriculum, what I've been thinking, the curriculum that we get feedback on in Twitter. Let's make that even better. Could you lead this day? And in all areas, I approached the people that I thought were the best in that area. And weirdly, or wonderfully, so many of them said yes. So this is how we can have a really wonderful course. So let's talk about people who will be teaching it. After the first day, which is today, we will have Andrew Sachs teaching us about linear networks. He's done wonderful work on the theory of deep learning, works at Oxford, and he will teach us about linear learning, a lot of practical skills, an introduction to designing network, and really which concepts help us understand how neural networks actually work. The next day will be taught by Surya Ganguly. He brings physics thinking to deep learning, had a strong impact on the theory of neural networks, but also does wonderful works in neuroscience, works at Stanford. He will teach us about multi-layer perceptrons, how to build them, and importantly, how they actually work. The next lecture on day 4 will be Yanis Midliakas. He works on optimization and learning in Montreal. Everything we do in deep learning is built on optimization. He will teach us the relevant techniques. The last day in the first week is taught by my colleague Lyle Unger, who I tested the course with here. He works on machine learning in medicine, explainable AI. He is one of these Renaissance people that really bring lots of machine learning and deep learning ideas to a lot of different areas. He's also a very cool guy. And he teaches about regularization. The things that make machine learning work relative to earlier techniques is really regularization. Now, week 2 will be kicked off by Alana Fish, who works on computational linguistics, deep learning and neuroscience in Alberta, and she will teach us about parameter sharing, convnets, and recurrent neural networks. The second day, Alexander Ecker, he works on style transfer, computational neuroscience, works in Tübingen, and he also teaches, and he will teach us modern convnets. The kind of techniques that really made deep learning be the popular area that it is right now. The next day will be James Evans. He works on computational social science. He just wrote a deep learning textbook, teaches at the University of Chicago, and he will teach us recurrent neural networks. And I think he's a wonderful example how people from many different corners of science come together to make this cause be alive. The next day it will be her. She works on text generation and language understanding, among many other things, and she will teach us about attention and transformers. On the last day of the second week, finally, we'll hear from Vikash Gilja and Akash Srivastava. Vikash works on brain-machine interfaces at UC San Diego, and Akash works on unsupervised learning at MIT and IBM. And they will teach us about variational autoencoders and generative adversarial networks. Now that brings us to the third week, where we'll first hear from Blake Richards and Tim Lillicrap. Blake works in computational neuroscience at McGill, and Tim works on reinforcement learning at Google DeepMind. They will teach us about unsupervised and self-supervised learning. These are some of the really advanced and beautiful techniques in that field. Second day in the third week is by Jane Wang, who works on brain-inspired algorithms and many other things at DeepMind. She's been working with truly wonderful papers, and she will teach us about reinforcement learning. Then on the third day, we will again hear from the same group, Blake and Tim, as before, who will then teach us about reinforcement learning for games. Finally, on the fourth day of week 3, we'll hear from Josh Vogelstein and Vincenzo Lomonaco. Both of them work a lot on continual learning, among many other things. And they will teach us about continual learning, they will teach us about causality and the future of deep learning. And then lastly, on day 5 of week 3, we will hear from you. We will hear about your projects, your ideas. We will celebrate what we achieved in the 3 weeks that we will have had. Now, let's talk a little bit about the gestalt of current deep learning. Deep learning is a large field with research in lots of different areas. Here we have the results of the ICLR visualization, where what they do is they take all the papers that were submitted last year, they put them onto a 2-dimensional map. So what do we have here? So this is in a way the landscape of current research in deep learning. What you see is that traditional research where you just say, how can I best recognize an object? That's no longer very popular. What are the current areas? There's a large area here on the left, which is about learning with graphs. There's reinforcement learning and meta-learning. There's transformers. Remember, in week 2, we have a day focused on transformers. Learning with graphs is often versions of convnets. Reinforcement learning, keep in mind here, we have it extensively covered in week 3. And meta-learning is often reinforcement learning about how we want to learn. Then we have methods of allowing faster training. We have theory of deep learning. We have architectures, continual learning. See, the last day would very much sit here. Multi-agent methods, which we won't talk about, and GANs and autoencoders. Here, mind you, this is the last day of the second week. In any case, a lot of these modern techniques we will cover, not all of them, because this is not a full view over the current research field. So, what I want to invite you to is go run this ICLR visualization and look at a few abstracts. Just mouse over them. Ask yourself which papers you find interesting and which papers you find understandable. And come back in at most 15 minutes.